to a boat, and sat in it on the sea, and the whole multitude was on the land facing the sea. Then he taught them many things by parables, and said to them in his teaching, Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow, and it happened, as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds of the air came and devoured it. Some fell on stony ground, where it did not have much root, and immediately it sprang up because it had no depth in it. But when the sun was up, it was scorched, and because it had no root, it withered away. And some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no crop. But other seed fell on good ground, and yielded a crop that sprang up, increased, and produced, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. And he said to them, He who has ears to hear, let him hear. But when he was alone, those around him with the 12 asked him about the parable. And he said to them, To you has been given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God, but to those who are outside, all things come in parables, so that seeing they may see and not perceive, but hearing they may hear and not understand, lest they should turn, and their sins be forgiven them. And he said to them, Do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? The sower sows the word, and these are the ones by the wayside, where the word is sown. When they hear, Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that is sown in their hearts. These likewise are the ones sown on stony ground, who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with gladness. And they have no root in themselves, and so endure only for a time. Afterward, when tribulation or persecution arises for the word's sake, immediately they stumble. Now these are the ones sown among thorns. They are the ones who hear the word, and the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things entering in choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. But these are the ones sown on good ground, those who hear the word, accept it, and bear fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100.
Okay, thank you. Bit of a lengthy reading there, so thank you for doing that. But here we have Jesus' parable of the sower, and then the explanation that he gives for that parable. And also, in verses 10 through 12 or so, Jesus talks about the purpose of parables. And he quotes Isaiah, which is really interesting. But the first question I have for us this morning, I sent the questions out via email, but I'll also have them up on the slides, is, of course, in Mark chapter 4, not chapter 3. My first question is, why doesn't Jesus just tell everyone what he's trying to say? Why does he got to be cryptic and offer this parable first and do, why does he do this? Parables aren't immediately clear. So why would he choose to teach via parables as he often does? Yeah, we have a couple. Keith?
I personally think that metaphors help give understanding. I mean, it may be cryptic, but I think it's thought-provoking, and it gives something that we do understand from an earthly perspective, or from something we're familiar with or used to. Farmers, whoever, sojourners who saw these areas can identify. I've seen that, I've touched it, I feel I understand that.
Yeah.
And so the application makes it more understandable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. We'll touch more on that in a second, but that's a good point. Yeah.
Jesus uses parables for different reasons. Sometimes he uses them to teach, but sometimes he uses them to convict. And I immediately thought, when he uses them to convict, I think about the Wednesday night studies about David. And if Nathan had gone to David and just right off the bat said, "You're an adulterer, you're a murderer, you're a conspirer, you're a sinner," David wouldn't have heard a thing he said.
Right. Yeah, and we're kind of touching on similar things here. Sometimes direct discourse, just telling someone how it is, isn't always the best way to get things done, is it? Right? And Nathan and David is an excellent example. If Nathan had come in there on fire and just condemned David on the spot, that would have been, there's a good chance that David might not have taken that as well as he did when Nathan first gave him a parable. And he got him thinking, right? Without even him knowing it, possibly, right? He got him thinking about his own situation, what was going on. Kyle?
In the same way, the Pharisees were hanging on every word of Jesus to convict him, not to hear the message that he had to say.
Yeah.
They were looking to trip him up, find fault, whatever the case may be. Him teaching in these parables kind of isolated him from that, and they had to listen to what the message is. Many times they heard it, they saw the reaction of the crowd, they understood it was against them, but they really didn't understand. They just didn't understand.
Yeah, Mark wants to be really sure. And really, I think his main question in this chapter and with the parables overall is, are you really hearing? Not just are you listening, of course, not have the sound waves reached your ears, but are you really understanding what Jesus is saying? Are you taking time to slow down and actually hear what Jesus wants to say to you, rather than just push forward with whatever you think Jesus is saying to you, right? And that takes a little bit of time. Yeah. And do we have a question over here? Or a comment?
Yes, verse 9, Jesus says, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." That's the summary of his parable. To me, he's explaining, in a sense, why he's teaching in parable, because there are certain ones that are going to hear and some that are not going to hear. The style of the message, the metaphor that Keith was talking about, it's going to reach some people, it's not going to reach others by design.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So maybe on that note, we'll go to our next question. This is meant to be open-ended, I think. What do you all make of the statement, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear"? Right? What is that? What do you think about when you hear that? What do you think Jesus is trying to get across when he says that to those who are listening? Mark first, and then we'll go around.
I believe he's saying the people who understand this, let them understand. But they who don't understand what I'm saying, let them not understand.
Okay? Yeah? Yeah? David, and then we'll come up here.
It also reminds me of Isaiah, and I think the Pharisees especially would probably harken back to what Isaiah said, is essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
That the people had become deaf and they're unable to hear and unable to understand, and in turn, God's not going to save them.
Yes, good. I have another question about Isaiah, and that's our very next question, so I'm glad you brought that up. But working our way up here, yeah? Yeah.
Christ came, he had two purposes. There's kind of two parallel tracks that are operating here. One, he's come for the sinners, so the message has to be given out to those that will have their ears open. And the other track was that he needed to be sacrificed. So you had those people that would not accept, and yet they were a fulfillment to prophecy by the crucifixion.
Yep. That's another good point. Yep. For sure.
Is he saying, wake up, take this in, understand what I'm saying, and take this into your heart?
Yeah.
Would you do so?
Yeah. That's another good point. The very first thing he says is listen. Right? Hear what I'm saying to you. That's how he opens the parable. And of course, I think the words either listen or hear, I think that's repeated something like 13 times in this chapter by itself. So I would say the dominant theme is hearing, listening. And of course, not just the hearing or listening with your ears, but have you internalized what he's saying to you? And have you thought about it? And have you wrestled with it? And have you truly understood what Jesus is saying to you? The response he expects from you. And we'll go to our, does anyone have anything else on that? If not, we'll go to one of our final questions for this section. I guess there's 4 for this first 20 verses. And this is related to the quote of Isaiah. Why might Jesus quote Isaiah chapter 6, verses 9 and 10? That's where he's quoting from. Does he want the people around him to truly hear but not understand? Right? Or what's going on here? Because he says, to you, speaking to the 12, to you it's been given to know the secret of the kingdom, but for those outside, everything comes in parables, in order that they may look but not perceive, that they indeed may hear but not understand. So does he really want to hide this, or is something else going on? What do we think? Yeah, Kyle, and then we'll work our way around again.
So he's speaking to Jews. They've all read this passage, and there have been Jewish leaders who've explained what this passage means to them. So they have an understanding that the message is true, it's there, we have to think on it. And I think that's what he's bringing back is he is solidifying his statement with Scripture, that they're going to understand that there is a meaning there, we need to find what that meaning is.
Yeah. Good, yeah.
So I would say we all know that Jesus didn't desire for anybody to remain lost.
Right.
But I will say his teachings and his parables would reveal and expose those whose hearts were already hardened and they were just going to stay hardened.
Yeah.
Part of his mission was to expose, the Pharisees and the Sadducees for who they were.
Right. Yeah, and I think it exposes us too. It exposes us for who we are, if you will, right? Because we're the ones reading it now, and it exposes us for what we really did here. I had this thing happen all the time when I was a little kid, and even still today. I have trouble listening. I have trouble paying attention. And my mom would send me out to do something with like precise instructions, and I would get to maybe step 2, and then my eyes would glaze over. And it's that sort of thing. I struggle with that. And this is the same thing here. To your point, I don't think Jesus wants to conceal anything from these people. He doesn't want them to truly fail to understand. But he's speaking in parables and, exposing in us our desire to just confirm what we already think and feel. We had another comment over here. Yeah?
He didn't come here with any of his wants. It never was what Jesus wanted. He was fulfilling the will of God. And he knew the plan, and he knew that he was facing a crucifixion, and that crucifixion was going to come from those that did not understand.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And as much as it pains me to say, there are people who didn't understand Jesus, and that is part of what led to his death. Yeah.
The Bible teaches the principle that rejection of truth repeatedly results in believing a lie and a kind of inability to perceive truth at a certain point. And I think humanly we don't have a way to judge when that point is being reached. But I'm not quite so quick to dismiss the possibility that Jesus is, with his foreknowledge, has basically realized that these people, these hard-hearted people, are beyond, not that they couldn't, but they won't respond, and therefore he is possibly teaching so that they won't understand.
Yeah.
He's not giving it to them by design.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. We often think of Jesus as doing all the work and, kind of spoon feeding us these parables. I don't know that that's entirely the case, right? To Jeremy's point, this is partially on the people listening, right? The people on the shore, and it's partially on us to internalize what Jesus is saying, to think about it, to dwell on it, to wrestle with it, to hopefully come to a better, clearer picture of who God is, right? And what He is doing. Did you have a...
I was just going to say
Yeah.
it's reverse psychology.
Mm-hmm.
With kids, the easiest way to get them to do something is tell them they can't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I don't have kids of my own. David, and then to Mark.
And I think this is also, these aren't simple commands, and they're easy to hear and they're easy to read.
Right.
It's not just go do something one time and it's done. This
Right.
is a true life transformation. And obviously for the Pharisees and ultimately the Gentiles as well, but for us today.
Right.
And so, kind of back to your point, it's really easy to read and to understand, but it's really hard to implement throughout your lifetime.
Right.
Not just as a one-time thing.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Jesus is not just coming in to critique one little thing here or there and just make a few adjustments, right? Jesus is announcing that the God of Israel has come to His people in the form of Him, right? Jesus is announcing that He is the King who has come to reign. And that's not a small thing. That's a big thing He's got to convince a lot of people about. And that's a hard thing to do, right? When you're trying to change that many minds that quick. So yeah. Do we have one more? Caleb, did I see your hand go up? All right. All right. If that is all for this question, we'll go on to this question. This might seem a little bit easy, but I want us to sort of make sure that we think about this. Is who does Jesus tell this parable to in the Gospel of Mark? We're hearing the parable, of course, because we can read it and internalize it and talk about it with one another, but who is He telling it to in Mark chapter 4? Mark?
Jesus was raised Jewish. We are all aware of that. So He's telling Jews, and they might not understand because it is a new form of religion in a way. And the Old Testament was told by word of mouth because not everyone could read, very few actually. And so He is quoting, I think, Isaiah in a way to tell other people, I know this information just like you do, and I want
Yeah.
to share with you some of the verse that I think is very important.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus is not, or I guess a better statement would be Jesus is someone who sees the Old Testament as very important and sees it as very important for figuring out who He is, right? Or for describing who He is and what He's here to do. So, yeah. I think at this point our computer's conked out on us, but that's okay. I'll make sure to read the questions at least twice, and we can go from there.
I think not only was He addressing the crowd, but then when He was talking to the 12 separately and explained the parable in depth, I
Yeah.
think He wanted to prevent them from becoming discouraged when they went out into the world to preach the word, and people didn't respond instantly. He wanted them to know that some people will be receptive, some won't. Some will soak it up right away, and then it'll dry up in short order.
Yeah.
And only a small handful will actually have the initial growth and then mature in that growth.
Yeah, I think that's another good point. The disciples are sent out on their own at various points in the throughout the Gospels, and they need to be prepared for rejection as well, right? So that's a good point. I like that.
That explains why
Yeah.
when he tells them to go out, he says, if they receive you, stay, and if they don't, move on.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a lot of people who will receive it, and you try to get it to as many as you can in the limited time that you've got.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point too. Jesus doesn't have all the time that there is, right? We know that he's with us for a short time. So yeah. But these parables, I think my point with this final question was that these parables are sort of first to Israel, if you will. Mark wants to encourage these readers not to make the same mistake that Israel did in the time of Isaiah, right? Don't reject the king and the kingdom that has now come to you, right? Don't miss out on this, right? Something greater than Moses is here. So hear, listen, pay attention, that sort of thing.
In verse 13, Jesus seems to be stating that this parable is the foundation, in a sense, of all parables. That the principles in this parable need to be understood so that all the parables that Jesus teaches can be understood.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it is for the crowd, but as has been said, it's got a special application for the apostles and how they're going to
Right.
teach or to receive the other teachings that Jesus is going to give.
Yeah, I think that's good. And kind of going off of that, I think it's important that we don't just get one parable from Jesus, right? Each gospel has several. And even in just this one chapter, there's more parables than just the first one about the kingdom, right? Because we get the lamp under the bushel basket, the parable of the growing seed, and then the parable of the mustard seed, right? All of this helps his listeners sort of marinate in the message and think more deeply about what he's trying to tell them. So yeah. And now we're going to move on. Will someone read verses 21 through 25 for us real quick?
And he was saying to them, a lamp is not brought to be put under a basket, is it? Or under a bed? Is it not brought to be put on the lampstand? For nothing is hidden except to be revealed, nor has anything been secret, but that it would come to light. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. And he was saying to them, take care of what you listen to. By your standard of measure, it will be measured to you, and more will be given you besides. For whoever has, to him more shall be given, and whoever does not have, even what he has shall be taken away from him.
Okay, thank you. Great. Jesus, again, we get this saying, he who has ears to hear, or if you have ears to hear, hear, right? So that's twice we get that now. And then some translations say, take care what you hear. That's good. My translation has pay attention to what you hear. And I like that a lot. Because I think this is a big part of what Jesus is talking about. Pay attention. Notice what you're hearing. Right? Going back to this illustration of me in my childhood when I'd been given a task, oftentimes my mom would stop me at instruction 2 or 3 and say, okay, can you repeat that back to me? What did you hear? And I feel like this is kind of similar, right? He's asking the question, what did you hear? Right? Pay attention to what you think you're hearing. And that will tell you what you're really valuing in my words. But the question I had for this section is, what do you all make of the statement, the measure you give will be the measure that you get? Again, this is meant to be open-ended. I'm curious. This statement really strikes me. So, what do we think that Jesus is saying here? Exactly.
What you put into it is about how much you're gonna get out of it.
Yeah. I think Jesus is kind of stepping out into, he's kind of making himself a little bit more clear here, it seems like. And I think that's exactly his point. How much work are you willing to do to understand this? Going back to Jeremy's point earlier, Jesus isn't necessarily spoon-feeding us the message of these parables by himself, right? He's expecting us to do some personal work as well, to hear it, to meditate on it, to try our best to understand it.
A good example of that is a Bible in a year reading plan and two different approaches to it. One approach is to sit down with the Word and read your daily portion of the Word, and as you're reading, you may have questions pop up, and you'll go back and reread something, or maybe check another scripture to verify. The other approach is when I'm driving, sometimes I listen to audio Bible, and I don't have a chance to go back and research these.
Mm-hmm.
So when I just listen without paying attention, I'm not gaining nearly as much from it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Those are two different things, and Jesus wants you to, this is the time for all of those who are hearing not to speak, right? This isn't like discussion time. This is Jesus offering these parables to them, right? And they need to listen, right? That's their only job at this point. Listen and understand and respond, hopefully. And the purpose, I think, of these parables is to meet these people at wherever they are, and to draw them deeper into the message of Jesus, right? Because we have some different, there may have been some Gentiles in the crowd. There may have been some Jewish people in the crowd. And, Jesus is talking to a wide bunch. And then, of course, we know he talks to his disciples. So part of the purpose of these parables is to meet these people where they are and then draw them into better understanding of what Jesus is truly here to do.
Just rephrasing what you said, the parables, they haven't changed for 2,000 years, but what I read 20 years ago is not the depth of the parable that I read today. Because I've had more experience, we've been able to sit in a class and share ideas with those who have more experience, that were able to teach me some things that I didn't understand when I first learned.
Right. And Jesus has a point with this parable. He wants to communicate something to the crowd, but by the same token, the parables are these inexhaustible things. The sayings of Jesus, other than his parables as well, the whole Bible is this inexhaustible well that we can draw on. And when you read something today, 20 years from now, I might not have the same, it might hit me differently. And I'll see a different thing in that verse than I saw that's important than I saw today, right? Not that the Bible has changed or anything like that, but it'll just, I've encountered it in a new part of my life, right? And so it speaks to me in a different way.
I remember hearing a preacher once who took verse, it was the one that talks about he who has more be given, and was speaking about economic means, and was going off on some strange tangent. Really, the passage seems to be talking back to the original sower parable and the idea of hearing the word and accepting it. That's the one who has. Who has heard the word and accepted it, that one is going to be given more. The one who doesn't have the word because they haven't accepted it, that what they have is going to be taken away. It just seems that the first parable and this kind of summary statement are connected through that.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I think about when you're either making something or building something, or writing something or whatever it is, you're going to get out of it what you put into it to some degree, right? This was This is a lot of people's experience in places like college, right? You get out of it what you put into it. If you don't do the work that's assigned to you, guess what? You don't learn very much. Jesus wants them to understand that this is something they're going to have to work at as well. We'll go Caleb and then up to Charles.
There was a preacher a long time ago at Southside down in Pasadena. He has long since gone on to his reward. But he would always tell us that preaching that is not storming the will is not good preaching. I think something that Jesus is trying to do with these folks is he's trying to storm their will. And he obviously succeeded in a way, because they, at one minute they're listening and they're receptive, and then the next minute they're screaming, crucify, crucify. So, their will was stormed, but was it for good?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Charles.
Well, that you were saying that if you invest, you should get a return, and that's usually true. But the thing that's always true is that if you don't invest anything, you don't make nothing. It's not going to come flying to you.
Right.
You don't sow seed, you're not going to get a crop.
Right.
And a lot of times you sow seeds, and for some reason or other it fails, but you're never going to get a crop you don't sow.
Yeah.
So like nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah, I like that point a lot as well. That's really good. What's always true is that you won't get anything if you don't try in the first place. Let's move on to verses 26 through 34. Does someone want to read that really quickly for us?
I've got it.
All right.
And he said, "The kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed on the ground. He sleeps and rises night and day, and the seed sprouts and grows, and he knows not how the earth produces by itself, first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain of the ear. But when the grain is ripe, once he puts the sickle, he puts in the sickle, because the harvest has come. And what can we compare the kingdom of God, or what parable shall we for it? It is like a grain of mustard seed, which is sown on the ground. It's the smallest of the seeds of all. It's the smallest of all seeds on the earth. And when it is sown, it grows up and becomes large. All the garden plants and puts out such large branches, so that the birds of the air can make nests in its shade. With such many parables, he spoke the word to them, and they were able to hear it. He did not speak to them without a parable, but privately to his own disciples, he explained everything.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so the question that I had for this section is, what response do we think that these parables about the seed and about the kingdom are asking of the crowds? What response do these parables seek to generate in the crowds that Jesus is talking to here? Oh, sorry. Thought I had a hand. Mark?
I believe that it's saying like those that believe will be saved. Those that don't believe will not.
Okay.
You're asking about the response of the crowd to these parables. My response to it is like, what am I
I like that you said that. That's going to be the observation that I make about this section here in a second. There are other places where the kingdom of God is kind of portrayed as a tree. You can go to Daniel chapter 4, verse 12, verse 21, Ezekiel 17, 23, and then chapter 31, verses 6, where God's kingdom is kind of described similarly as it is here. And I think what Michael said is true, and I think what Jesus wants to do is to get a positive response, ultimately, right? He doesn't want, like we said, people to totally misunderstand, I think. I think he wants to communicate something to them, but they do need to do their share of the work, and he wants to garner a positive response to what God is doing through Jesus as he goes throughout his life. Now, one thing I wanted to notice about this section is when Jesus is done telling these parables, we actually don't see the reaction of the crowd in this chapter. We get to the end of that parable with the birds of the air can make nests in its shade, and then it just says, and he spoke in parables a lot. And we don't get the crowd's response narrated explicitly for us here. And I think that is an invitation for us, just like Michael said, to think about ourselves. Right? Jesus has talked to the crowd, but now the onus is on you. How are you hearing? How are you responding to this seed that is the gospel?
I want to point out that it says that he only told what these parables meant to the disciples in private. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of to me, that means that he was wanting the people that actually heard and wanted to understand. He was wanting them to seek out what those meant.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And then we'll go to Charles after.
I think he's doing what he does to us today. We go back to the Old Testament for a lot of lessons. Those people had that same Old Testament. Did they use it? Was that the root that they found
Yeah.
Christ?
Yeah.
Did they go to the prophecies for Christ?
Yeah.
And I think he was just journeying them back to the Old Testament, just like we use the Old Testament today.
Yeah, that's a great point as well, yeah. And Charles?
Well, what he was saying, Jesus taught in two different ways. And they teach that to like salespeople and stuff today. Asking questions, you can dominate the conversation. But then the other thing is to try to get them to ask you a question. And that's one of the things the parable has. The people that just walk off and left, well then, that's so good. But people that come to him and ask him, then he's ready to go further.
Yeah, that's good. The people who stay are the people that really want to be there. And that's part of what the parables do, is help sort that crowd out. Yeah.
I like what he says about this. You see in this that a person has to want to know. I have taught many people many things and tried to teach them over years about one certain thing. And it doesn't get there. And then finally, all of a sudden, one day it clicked. And they wanted to know. And you could teach them all about it. And they could tell you about it. And that's the one thing the military taught me also. It's if you teach somebody these things or whatever, after you've taught them all of this, then you hand them the rod and let them tell you about each thing you just talked about.
Yeah.
That way it gets through both ways. That has our attention deficit, and all this kind of stuff goes around. Each and every one of us has different levels of that attention. And we have to work on those things.
Yeah.
And we've got to get our mindset of, I want to know.
Yeah. That's really good, yeah. I like that point a lot. All right, so let's tackle the last few verses. Will someone read verses 35 through 41? Yeah, 41.
On the same day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us cross over to the other side." Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was. And other little boats were also with him, and a he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, Who can this be that even the wind and the seas obey him?
Okay, thank you. All right, so we don't have a ton of time for this last question, but we'll go ahead and throw it out there. Mark notes the disciples fear twice in these verses. Jesus says, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And then he says, "And then they were filled with great fear." So maybe this is a little bit of a simple question, but I think it's worth exploring. Why might they be afraid? They're with Jesus. Why are they afraid? Mark?
I mean, Jesus is asleep in the boat and there's a storm going on. So they're afraid because they're like, alright, what's going on here? This is a little odd. He is asleep and there's a storm going on. We need to wake him up to ask him how we can react.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be pretty scared too if someone was asleep on my boat.
Yeah.
And there's a storm going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Fear appears oftentimes as the opposite of belief in Mark. Right? There's a lot of fear in Mark, I think, if you read it as a whole. And I think Mark wants to show a range of responses to Jesus. Sometimes people believe in him, sometimes they don't, right? In the very next chapter, there's going to be a prime example of this. And I think he wants us to make up our minds, to put a decision time before us, and sort of ask us, here's the different reactions you see. What do you think about Jesus? Who is he to you, right? Because I'm putting him forward as the Lord of the universe, right? He's master of the sea and the winds and the waves, just like Yahweh in the Old Testament. But he wants to bring people to that conviction with him, I think. Part of this, yeah. Michael?
Why else did they wake him? There was a purpose. They knew he could do something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't think that they were necessarily afraid that he had such power to control the winds and waves. I think the fear is like my fear. I didn't have enough faith in what I'm bringing to Jesus. They brought their need. They said, "We need you to do something. We're dying." He did it, and then he asked them, why are you still afraid? Don't you have faith?
Yeah.
And they didn't believe maybe necessarily that he could do those things.
Yeah.
And not have good faith.
Yeah, that's a good point too, yeah. Maybe one last thing to note before we wrap up is the role of humans is to trust God, right? And there are a couple Psalms that talk about this specifically. In Psalm 3:5, it mentions, and Psalm 4, verse 8, I think there's mention of sleeping, right? The psalmist says, "I'm going to sleep even though there's trouble about." I didn't look those up specifically, but I'd have to go back and do that. But Jesus is he's also putting his trust in God as someone who rests in the boat and chooses not to be, scared. He knows that he has the power to do this. So he also displays trust in the Father as he chooses to fall asleep in the boat. So yeah, next, if no one has anything else, next week Kyle should be back and we'll tackle Mark chapter 5. And it's about 10:18 at this time, so we're a little bit over. But thank you guys as always for your questions. You guys always have some great comments and questions.
Singing this where I'm just trying to figure out if we got a battery problem or do
I could bring, I think it's probably just a battery. I could bring the cord out here. I don't know, that might be a little intrusive.
No, it's fine with me. I just, trying to say,